What is a key aspect that makes our Windows world run? It's services. We know that Windows Server itself consists of many important services to make the functionality available to us on the network. Let's take a look at service accounts, which are actually the entities that services are running as. I wanted you to get your hands on this technology, so launch the hands-on lab if it's convenient now. And let's begin by proving what I just said, that services are going to run as some kind of a user account identity on the network. Let's check this out. So if you do a search for services, we'll see that we're going to get the services desktop application. So let's launch that so we can see the services that make up our Windows environment. So you look in here and there's the computer browser service, there's the DNS server, the DNS client. As we add roles and features, more and more services will inevitably get installed. And notice that they are all logging on as an identity. Look at this. There's 3 of them that are going to be used by Windows Server. There is the local service, there's the local system, and then there's the network service. Now, I just kind of randomly selected the DNS client here, and notice it's running as the network service account. Think about it. Do you think the DNS client would need more privileges, or would the DNS server service on the system need more privileges? Sure, it would be the DNS server service, and that is exactly what's happening. Notice the DNS server service is logging on as the local system account. This is the most privileged account that we have for these purposes. If it needs to access another entity on the network, can it? Its name really sounds like it can't, the local system, but it would be able to do that, and it would assume the identity of this local system. The next level of privilege would be the local service account. Notice here the link layer topology discovery mapper would run as a local service account, or the account called local service. This is going to have less privileges from the local system. And something else that's interesting, if it were to access some other machine on the network, it would have to do so as the anonymous user account on that other system. So much lower privilege situation happening with the local service account. Now, for systems that need to access other systems routinely, like this IPsec policy agent, we'll use the network service. This is a great account for accessing those other machines as the identity of this machine. And once again, this account does not possess the privilege levels of that amazing local system account. Now, here's the deal. We do not mess with Windows Server and these accounts. I mean, they knew what they were doing when they designed this. So when we look at we were taking a look at the DNS client and the DNS server, they've given the DNS client the network service account to log on as. They've given the DNS server the local system account. They know exactly what permissions these accounts need for this service to function beautifully. And of course, they're using the least privilege concept here, aren't they? The local system has privileges that are different from the network service that has differences from the local service. So they're following this nice paradigm. If you were to go in and try and change these logon as settings, you would run into all kinds of errors. By the way, as we're going to see in a moment, changing this is simple. You double click the service and you go to log on, and this is where we can see the local service account. Now it's interesting, here's the password. What is the password? We have no idea. And that's another beauty of this system. For all of the Windows Server services, Microsoft is handling the passwords for us. We don't have to get involved with any of that. But where this can get super interesting and where you might want higher levels of control is when you install applications on top of Windows Server. And those applications are going to install a service for themselves to run, and then they're going to potentially install a service account. Or they're going to have you create a service account with the appropriate parameters and assign it to the service. Creating a custom service account is super simple. Let's do this. Let's launch the Active Directory users and computers. And by the way, we can just go dsa.msc in order to launch that quickly. All right, here we are in Active Directory users and computers. We'll go into our users container. I'll right click and say new user. we are going to say, all right, we have this user named custom and last name is services. And you would typically give this user login name some kind of ID like SRV, so we can really see that this is a service account. So we'll just say SRV hyphen account as the name of this account and choose next. Now we have to provide a password, and the password has to meet the password complexity requirements, the password expirations, all that stuff that we've got set up in our domain. That's actually a pain in the rear. That's the official terminology when it comes to this account, isn't it? When we have these custom accounts, Microsoft isn't handling the password management. We have to. A real lazy way to go would say, okay, this password never expires. Not only is this lazy, this could really be a potential security breach in your environment, since this service account could be breached and could wreak havoc in the network if someone were to get the password. So all these are real important considerations for this service account. We'll say next and finish. Now, we are not assigning custom rights to this account, and it would need custom rights and privileges, I'm sure. And like I said, typically the application vendor is going to tell you exactly what this account needs to be able to do. There is certainly something we know this account is going to have to be able to do, and that is log on as a service. That is a custom right that this account is definitely going to need. And the great news is when we try and use our custom services account against a service for logon, that right will be granted automatically. Now, if we switch back over to the services applet here, we see that we don't want to mess by any means with any of these services. In fact, I indicated to you we would get an error if we attempted to do that, most likely. So let's do this. Let's launch PowerShell and let's create a dummy service that we can use inside of this lab to play with. The PowerShell applet, or commandlet, I should say, for creating a new service is, surprise, surprise, new service. We'll go ahead and give this new service a name of nug srv, and we'll give this service a binary path name. So this is another required parameter here, a binary path name of, how about C:\Windows\system32, and then notepad.exe. So we are pointing to this notepad application as the binary path name for this imaginary service that we're creating. Notice it created the service. We can't start this service because it would error out because it's just totally a dummy service that we've created. But what we can do is refresh in the services applet and we can see our nug srv service. And by default, it's set up to run as the local system, that most privileged service account that could exist. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click this thing and we're going to go into the logon area and we're going to say we want this service to run in the context of, I think we gave it a name of SRV. Let's check the names. There it is, the custom services account that we created. We know that there is a password that we assigned. And of course, I grabbed the password off of the clipboard in our lab controls. And we'll say, okay. This is that dialog that I told you would happen. This account has to be granted the logon as a service right, and it was just granted that particular user right. So if we check the logon as for our dummy service, we are going to be using that SRV custom service account that we created. Now, along came Windows Server 2008. And around the 2008 of Windows Server, Microsoft said, let's give our users the ability to do something really clever. Let's create a virtual account for them that they could use for these services. So this is kind of nice because it would give us the granularity of seeing who that account is from a logging perspective. I mean, think about that. If you've got all these services banging against something as the network service account, we don't don't have granularity in our logging and auditing. This would give us that granularity, but we would have to do the password account management, for instance. So the virtual account concept is something really cool. Here's how you do it. It's so simple. You're going to go into the service, and under log on, you're going to get rid of this service account that we set up. So just triple click, highlight, get rid of all of this stuff. And for the account, you're simply going to say NT service and then a backslash and the name of the service. Our name was, of course, NUGSRV for the Nugget service. There is no password that we're going to enter here because Microsoft is managing that password for us, and we just set up the virtual account for this service. So in this nugget, we discussed how services are going to log on as an account. We call these, in general, service accounts. We saw the built-in local system, local service, and network service accounts. And then we looked at the creation of a custom service account in none other than Active Directory users and computers. We also took a look at a brand new, at least as of 2008, a concept called the virtual account, where we can have a nice user account managed by Microsoft for the service, and we just have to provide the correct syntax in the log on as area, and we're all set. We are not done with this concept of how service accounts can run. In the very next nugget, we'll take a look at managed service accounts and group managed service accounts. I hope you found this nugget informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.